Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and probably Tampa today is Brandon Middleton. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, staying busy and loving life.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Now, we've known each other. I mean, it's not like we talk every day or anything, but we've known each other probably for how many years? 5, 7, something like that?
I think it's more like 8 or 9, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's been a long time, way back.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, and we're in a mastermind together, and you know, and your wife does some help with that mastermind, the Collective Genius, and which she does a great job, by the way. And so yeah, I wanted to get you on the Brain Picker Pro Show because number one, marketing is the lifeblood of any business. And you, my man, are a marketing genius, okay? And and I know there's a lot of people out there that say, you know, I'm good at marketing or whatever, and I like to consider myself pretty decent at it. But you are the go-to guy. I mean, you're the guy that the gurus go to for marketing. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. We've worked with a ton of them over the years.
Exactly. So let's do this. Let's just start out. I mean, but you're also a real estate investor. You do a lot of deals. You know, maybe not to the extent of a lot of guys do hundreds of deals a year, but you know, I mean, but hey, you got a really respectable real estate business and you're doing deals. You're out there, you know, making it happen. So why don't you start out and tell our listeners a little bit about who is Brandon Middleton?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a husband and a father. And I always say that, you know, we invested in a lot of things from I'm in a couple of biomed startups. I obviously invest in real estate, a little bit of Bitcoin, but my best investment has always been my wife, and my second best investment is my kids, and I'm seeing the fruits of that now that they're getting kind of out of the baby years. But outside of that, yeah, I am a marketer. I believe every business owner needs to be a marketer, and I've always been fascinated, probably since I was in middle school, with marketing. Like I look at commercials, I look at banners and you know, driving on the side of the road, looking at billboards, and I'm always paying attention to the messaging and always paying attention to, like, there's obviously a ton of money being spent, and what really drives people to make a decision to, you know, to buy that cheeseburger or buy that car or whatever it is.
Right.
Marketing's everything.
Right. That is awesome. Now, when did you get started in real estate?
So originally I got started in real estate. Real estate's actually what got me into marketing, funny enough. It's kind of ironic. I got started in, I think, 2006. Right. My grandfather saw an ad in the newspaper for a free seminar. I had recently read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I got into real estate. I went to this event. I didn't have any money, and my grandfather was like, look, if you're serious about being an entrepreneur, I want to buy this 3-day training for you. And I was like blown away. It was like he was paying for college. And and so we went to a Robert Allen event and learned the basics, but it was right before everything was, you know, the recession, right? So,
right. So
that was not the best time to be learning. And my wife and I immediately went to a realtor, showed up at houses when they were over, you know, it was bidding wars,
right?
And overpaid for 2 houses, and used all of our money, all of our own credit, and wound up having to short sale those 2 houses 3 years later with another friend of ours who helped us do that. We bought them for like $130. We probably had like $150 into each of them, and sold them for $30,000. So yeah, that was my first introduction. So obviously the bubble burst. We went into a recession, and my wife and I had to figure out a different business. So we had basically a web design business with a college friend of mine. Started putting more focus on that. Realized, well, people don't want websites; they want customers, they want leads. So over the last 12 years, we grew that business. Started working with a lot of real estate trainers and gurus, and really understanding that business. So even though we were in a marketing business and doing a lot of digital marketing, Selfishly, I was doing it to also learn, like I was getting paid to learn real estate. I'm
Right.
genuinely interested in it. But fast forward, that business is spitting off a lot of extra cash, and it became hard to be in that business and be a marketer without actually doing real estate. We took
Right.
that hiatus for so long, and we're like, it's been long enough. We need to get back into real estate. And our financial advisor was like, look, you can either grow your company and hire more employees, which I'm a lifestyle guy. I don't like the idea of this huge team and huge operation and a bunch of people to manage. He's like, you either got to push it to 5X your business, or you need to find better ways to put your money to work. And so naturally, the first thing that came to mind was we need to get back into real estate.
Right.
So my wife and I did. We started wholesaling this time. Our rule was not to spend any of our own money and of our own credit, even though we had it, on anything except for making the phone ring to get motivated sellers on the phone. And we spent a few $1,000s on postcards, and I took one of my clients' courses on wholesaling, postcards, bandit signs, and within 90 days, we'd spent a few $1,000 and we had $61,000 in deals, and the rest was history.
That's awesome. That is really good.
Yeah, very part-time. It's been, a very busy business in the marketing agency, and I was able to answer the phone while I was driving. I got the kids in the back seat, going on appointments, after the work day was over, a couple times on the weekends, and just closing deals, what is that, about a deal or two a month, very part-time. So
that's great.
It just made me a better marketer for the real estate education clients that I work with too, because I know the process. I know it works. It's not, it's not hype like a lot of skeptics might say.
In other words, you practice what you preach, right?
Yeah. We eat our own cooking. Yeah.
That's really good. So Brandon, what kind of real estate do you do? Are you wholesaling? Are you keeping them as a landlord, or what?
Yeah. So I tell people we probably wholesale, I'd say 8 out of 10 properties. This year it's been 9 out of 10 properties.
Right.
And that was really the plan. Just have this business that created some cash flow for those home run deals that we could just cherry pick. So we bought a triplex our first year that had like a 23% cap rate. My wife she wasn't an employee of the company for years, so she couldn't invest in her IRA much. So we did a lease option deal, or a seller finance deal, with just a few $1,000 out of her IRA, turnkey rental, made great rental income, sold it for 20 grand more than she paid for it. So pumped another 20 grand in her IRA. So when we find those like no brainer deals, we buy those. And otherwise, we're just wholesaling.
That's
just a
really
big
cool.
Marketing business. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I really liked what you said about you're more into the lifestyle than the enterprise type business. There's enterprise business and lifestyle. Enterprise, you got an office with employees and staff and all that. And then there's enterprise business where you can do your business from your spare room at the house on your laptop or sitting on the beach or at Starbucks or whatever, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love that. And you know what? That brings to mind, there's a lot of gurus, teachers, educators out there that are talking about building this machine, but really that's not what everybody wants, because money, I've learned over the years, money's just a tool that gives you the freedom to be able to spend your time the way you want to. Now, if you like an office, if you like being around a team and people and all that, that's great, but you don't want to build a machine that it runs you. You want to be able to run it, if that makes sense. And I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I've had some good mentors over the years who have shown me the value of stay small, keep it all, being small on purpose. And I've also learned what not to do from a lot of people that I've seen just do really great financially, just to look at build these huge companies.
Right.
And seeing that takes time away from the family, and they missed a lot of things with their kids. And, we didn't wait 13 years to have children for me to be gone all the time and miss those early years. So
yeah, because your kids are what, 3 and 4 or somewhere around there? Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's a great fun age.
Yeah, it has definitely been. The first 3 years, I'm not gonna lie, were a blur, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's kind of funny hearing you say that, like talk about how long you've been doing this, or 2006 or whatever, when you kind of went to that first seminar, and waiting 13 years to have kids, because you look very, very young.
I'm 34.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think I look younger than I am.
Yeah, I hear you. But that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So tell us a little bit about marketing for real estate. I mean, I know you're a great digital marketer, but what are some of the things that you recommend that people do, especially just starting out? Because like I buy a lot of HUD houses, okay? And I remember when we were making 500 or 600 HUD offers a day, and I remember when there was 150 HUD houses available in North Carolina, and there was like 100 available in South Carolina on any given day. And now it's like maybe 30 in one state and 50 in another state, and MLS stuff too. But I'm having to do a lot of marketing now, and I've also gone wide instead of just focusing right in my MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. I'm buying houses all over North Carolina and South Carolina. So, on HUD and the MLS. But I've had to start doing some outside marketing. So I know there's a lot of
competitive market.
Yeah, you have to. It's the way real estate is. It's cyclical, right? So I've had to do that as well. So tell our listeners a little bit about, what do you recommend a brand new person starting out? What should they do to get that first deal under their belt in 90 days? Like you had 5 deals in your first 90 days when you started marketing. So what should that person do? What kind of marketing are they going to get the biggest bang for their buck?
So just a disclaimer, right? Marketing is all about testing, and it's just like you said with real estate, it's cyclical. So postcards are everyone's doing postcards for a while, and then next thing you know, there's 20 postcards at every seller appointment you show up to. So it's always moving, so that you always need to have a portion of your budget testing new things.
Right.
But I really love direct mail still. Sending postcards, and the thing with postcards is to have them be more mom and pop, not, I'm this big XYZ corporation, call me if you want to sell your house. So we send out postcards, and here in Florida, we get away with a lot with bandit signs. I mean, I know some areas that you might not be able to have bandit signs up for very long, but we put out a ton of bandit signs. So yeah, I mean, if you're a new investor, the first thing I would do is what my wife and I did. We agreed on a budget of money and a budget of time.
Right.
So if you have a budget, we agreed that we were going to get into this business, and it's a business. You're thinking about it like, what can you invest in this startup called your real estate business?
Right.
And we said $5,000 a month, and we would be willing to go 6 months with no deal. So we were willing to lose $30,000 if that's what, but that was the cutoff. It was like, all right, even if there's no evidence, if it looks like this is going to be a much bigger rock, then after 6 months we're going to cut it off. And obviously it didn't take nearly that much time or that much money within that first round of marketing that we put out. We had plenty of leads. And it just took 90 days before they basically all wound up closing around that third month. So like each month we didn't spend that $5,000 the second and third month, because we already had quite a few deals in the pipeline. So pick that budget. And, I talk to a lot of new investors. If you don't have much of a budget, then you got to go a different route, right? You have to have just a time budget. You got to be willing to do more legwork to get deals. So great example. One of my neighbors wanted to get into real estate, and he didn't want to spend money right away. He just had a lot of questions, right? He was waiting for that reality check, right? They want to see that it's real first before they spend money. And I don't necessarily recommend that, but he wound up just finding somebody else's deal and bringing it to me, and I wholesaled it for him, and we split the profit. So in his first week, he didn't spend any money, but he had the relationships. Right. And he made $3,000 in just for sending a text message and a couple of phone calls. Right. So if you're new, you need to be, crawling Craigslist on a daily basis. You need to be doing that outbound, calling for sale by owners and driving for dollars and, knocking on doors, going to real estate meetups and building relationships with other wholesalers. And, if I had no money and I was starting, or very, very little money, that's where I would spend my time building those relationships, and adding value to another wholesaler. Because I think if you don't have money, you're pretty much going to be a bird dog in the beginning. Right. You're going to have to go and, bring leads to somebody else who has the buyers or who has the money, and, make a few $1,000s here and there with, no risk but your time. But if you have money, then the marketing is, for me, I like the postcards. I like the flexibility of getting a lead and knowing that lead's not going to go cold as quickly as like a pay-per-click lead. Right. Right. Advertising on Google right now is in this market. I know a few people that are doing great with it, but I don't have the lifestyle where I'm willing to take a phone call from someone who just filled out my form and probably filled out 10 other people's forms, and be willing to drop everything and go, drive a half hour away at 8 o'clock at night to go meet that seller. So for me, it doesn't work, but that's why I prefer direct mail and bandit signs, because I'm reaching them before they've necessarily thought about going and searching for a cash buyer. Right.
That's a really, really good point. You made a lot of great points during that little segment, and I want to touch on a few of them. But the internet marketing leads, those are the ones that are probably, that person is taking initiative, and they've actually sat down at the computer and searched to find your ad, right? And that's going to be probably a lot more competitive, in the sense that you gotta answer it live, number one. And then, like you said, if they called at 7 o'clock at night, you got to book the appointment for 7:30 that same night, or they've already filled out 3 or 4 other web forms, right?
Yeah. Yeah. With a direct mail lead, like I'll close deals that came in, leads that came in 3 months ago, because, all right, maybe I didn't follow up with them as much, or maybe they weren't ready when I first reached out, but then I'll send like a voicemail broadcast just to kind of stir up some inbound calls. And, that person didn't go, and likely they still haven't sold the house 3 months later. Right. If you get an internet lead and you try to call that lead 3 months later, it was probably sold a week later. Right. Right. So that's just my thing on direct mail. And one other thing I have to stress, which was stressed to me, was even in the very beginning, every lead that sounds like any amount of motivation, I don't care if they told you that they want more for the house than what it's worth, you book the appointment. Right. You have to. One, when you're new, you're getting a lot of experience really quickly. You're learning really fast if you're out in the field. So that's what. That was my process in the beginning. Now I've gotten better over the phone. I try to do as much as I can over the phone before taking the time to go to an appointment. But any new investor, you have to get in front of that seller, because the trust factor goes through the roof. They tell you one thing over the phone, but when you're there in person, you learn way more about their situation. If there's any amount of motivation, go see that seller, and you'll be surprised what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And what we do in our office, and I've got 2 acquisition guys, what I do is if the person will let us in the house, we run the appointment. right? We run the appointment. At least if nothing else, we build a little bit of a relationship. And even like you said, 3 months down the road or whatever, they may remember us versus just a phone call when we never ran the appointment, right? So that's one of the things we do. I want to touch on a minute. You mentioned about when you're first getting started. And I tell people, you had a great budget starting out, $5,000 a month. That's really, really good. And listen, anybody who wants to get into real estate, if you can drop $5,000 to $10,000 a month, starting out for a couple of months, you're going to be able to hit the ground running, right? You do want to have a system for lead management, for follow-up and that sort of thing. But if you're on a limited budget or no budget, I tell people you need to spend at least $1,000 to $1,500 a month and plan on doing that at least 6 months. Like you said, 6 months at $5,000, $30,000, but at least $1,000 to $1,500 a month in marketing. But if they can't do that, you made a great comment, they're going to probably start out as a bird dog. So elaborate a little bit on, if they're a bird dog or if they're doing co-wholesaling. You didn't mention the term co-wholesaling, but that's basically what you were talking about.
Yeah, we call it JV.
Yeah, or JV, or a marketing partner where somebody else might put up the marketing money, but then, the new investor or the person who doesn't have the money will go out and run the leads or something. Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the question is how to become a bird dog?
Yeah, either a bird dog or do some co-wholesaling or JV type stuff when you're starting out with a limited or no budget.
Yeah, so it's all about finding a way to add value to somebody else while you're learning. Right. So if you don't have money to pay for a mentor or a coach, you don't have the money for marketing, you need to add value in exchange, for someone else's time and experience. So one of the first things I did as well was I started a meetup. I just started saying, hey, people in the area, I'm learning real estate too. I've closed a few deals now. Let's get together. This is a people business. Real estate is a people business. And there's more than enough money in a deal for everyone to get a little piece. Right. So I don't believe in competition. I believe more in co-opetition. And so that was serving the community. I said, if you're interested in real estate, come here. And it was funny because that attracted like the doctor, the chiropractor, the professional who has cash and credit. And they would be like, look, I have my practice to run. I have this, but I really want to get into real estate. That's someone who could be a potential lender. That's someone who could be a potential buyer. Right. That's someone who could put up the marketing dollars, but you'll make sure their marketing dollars don't go to waste because you'll be answering the phone and running the leads. So there's a lot. That's why I say just focus on building those relationships, going to the RIA meetings, finding other real estate meetups. But yeah, there's plenty of work that needs to be done, whether it could be as simple as going and taking photos for a wholesaler. I'll happily pay, $20, $50 for someone. Just go do the initial inspection, which you don't have to know anything about real estate. Just go be friendly, take pictures. You're going to get a little bit of money, nothing crazy, but you're getting to see these houses. You're getting experience. You're talking to sellers, not having to do the negotiation. Sure. That's valuable to another wholesaler. JVing, obviously, if you find a deal like my neighbor did, he knew someone else who was in real estate, but wasn't necessarily helping him find the buyer. So he needed a buyer for a property. He knew to call me. I had a buyer for the property, and there was a $6,000 spread on it, and we just split it 50-50. I talked to an Uber driver last week who really wanted to get into real estate, but he's like, I messed everything up. I'm starting all over, but I'm scared because if anything happens to me, my family won't be able to just pay the bills next month. Right. And I said, look, you're an Uber driver. You spend all day driving around neighborhoods, write down all these addresses, and he happens to be in my market. So I said, send them to me. I'll skip trace them. I'll get on the phone, contact the sellers. If I do a deal, you'll make some money. And he happened to already have 60 that he'd been doing that, writing down. So
wow.
Those are great leads.
That's
I'm not
awesome.
taking the time. Yeah, I'm not taking the time driving around all day,
sure.
Driving for dollars. So those are great leads that you're not going to find on the internet. You're not necessarily going to find in a mailing list. So any for sale by owners, any houses that look distressed or vacant.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a ton of things that you can do.
That's huge, man.
The point
that's
is
really
add
good.
value and build relationships.
That's huge. I love that. I mean, and if you hadn't struck up a conversation with him talking about real estate, you wouldn't have got that list of 60 vacant, rundown properties, right?
Right.
That's awesome. And you could even have a VA do that. If you didn't want to have to do it, you could have a VA look it up. So speaking of list, you talked a little bit about direct mail. I like what you mentioned about, you don't want to look like the big corporate. You want to look like a mom and pop, just you probably use just like a plain, yellow postcard with black letters or something. And what does your postcard say?
I wish I had one here with me, but they're pretty basic. They are, it's, hey, I was driving around the neighborhood. My wife and I are looking to buy some rental property in this neighborhood, and your house meets, that criteria. If you'd like to sell, we'll give you a fair cash offer. Give me a call. But it's a series, right? And that's
right.
The key with any marketing is it needs to be consistent. So I have 6 or 7 pieces. So they get that one, and if they don't respond, they get another one. And by about the third one, we mentioned we're going to send smoke signals like, hey, I've been trying to reach you. They're a little humorous,
right?
And just conversational, like trying to get them to just pick up the phone and call if they're interested.
Right. So you actually use a different postcard on each one, and it's just like a different level, and it references either the last one or something like that. Is it branded at all?
It's not branded at all.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
Yeah, I even have my name as the return address to our business address, but I don't have the company anywhere on it.
That's good. It just makes it look like you're just an average guy trying to buy a few houses for you and your wife, and that's it. That's really good. I like that. Now let's talk a little bit about the list. Well, where do you get your list? What do you look for? What's your criteria, if you don't mind? Because I mean, you're the marketing guru. You're the guru's marketing guru. So, what kind of list do you look for?
So I'm the marketing guru in the education side of the business, but when it comes to real estate, I still have a lot to learn. So,
right.
Full disclosure, but I would be. What I started with was what I was told to go for absentee owners, right? People that their tax record shows a different address than the property itself,
right?
And vacant and senior lists,
right?
So one thing that I ignored in the beginning, but obviously it still worked, was I picked those lists. I picked the absentee, vacant, senior and high equity, right? So that's kind of the criteria. Pick a few zip codes, right? Whatever your budget is, you're going to get a count from some, like listability, you'll get a count of how many records are in that zip code.
Right.
So pick a few zip codes, don't pick a whole, an entire county.
You want to test.
And buy those lists, right? 10 cents a record or whatever. And,
you were talking about non-owner occupied or absentee, vacant, senior, and high equity.
Oh, and then picking the criteria of the property. So you don't want properties that are, over 300,000 or over even 200. In my market, I really don't want to look at anything that has a value of over 150,000 because a lot of these houses we can pick up for, $30,000, $50,000, $60,000.
Yeah. Mine is 100. I don't want anything over 100.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the square footage. So I did get a lot of calls on smaller houses that are going to be harder square footage and bedrooms and bathrooms. We made money on 2 bedrooms, but typically a 3-bedroom is going to be, so your list is going to look smaller and smaller. And that might seem like a bad thing. You're like, oh, I'm only sending out X amount of cards, but you're being way more targeted. So Yeah, I wasn't doing that in the beginning, probably wasting a little bit of money on marketing, but that now we're getting more and more targeted with our direct mail, so we can, send more sequences of it.
That's really good. That's really good. And let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned consistency is the key. So let's talk a little bit about how often do you mail the same person, and how many times before you move on to another list?
I probably mail the lists 6 or 7 times before I move on to another list.
Right.
And I'll even come back to that list, 6 months or a year later sometimes, just to take another bite at the apple. But yeah, 6 or 7 times before you move on to another list. And how often? It's 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Depending on where we're at with the budget, how many leads are in that market. Right. I may have to break it up and, send half of sequence 1 to one part of the list, half of it to the next part. And so that in that scenario, we're sending one piece a month.
Right.
But we've tested doing as much as 1 a week.
Really?
We did that once. Yeah, it was pretty aggressive.
Wow.
I didn't have the tools in place to measure it before like I do now.
Right.
So I haven't done that yet. It's been a pretty consistent, every 2 to 4 weeks we send the next sequence.
Yeah. What I tell people is, let's say if you have in your budget, you could mail out, say, 4,000 postcards. Okay. I tell them to mail out 1,000 a week for 4 weeks, and then start back over on week 5 and do the same thing. That way you just take whatever number and divide it by 4, and you mail out, a quarter of it every week, and then start over on week 5 through 8, and then start over on week 11 or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
That's good.
And we've been using, do you guys use Property List Manager?
No.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest frustration with the direct mail for me, was keeping track of what part of the list did I mail? Which list have I already ordered, and keeping track of all the spreadsheets and
right.
And in the beginning, I was just sending it to a mail house, and then they were mailing it. And now we use PropertyListManager.com, and that keeps everything organized. It keeps a list, or what list did I buy? When did I mail it? How many times has it been mailed?
Right.
So that is a much easier way to keep that organized.
That's really good. And they do the mailings for you as well.
Yeah.
They schedule it and everything.
Yeah, I think there's about 8 pieces in there, and then you can give them your mail pieces and they'll upload them as well.
That's really great. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what kind of response rate is typical on a direct mail piece?
Well, industry-wide, 1% is what everyone says. I have been the happiest when I've gotten like 3 to 5% response rate on that sequence that I was talking about.
Right.
I've gotten as much as 8 to 10% response rate, but it was, the final notice postcards, right?
Yeah.
And it was so many leads and so many calls, it was so many contacts.
Right.
So much response.
Suspects, not prospects.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. So that was the highest response rate we got. Was, I think 1 month it was 12%, but it wasn't the type of response we wanted. We get less calls, but more deals.
Right.
When we're sending that sequence, that's very mom and pop. It's direct to the point. I'm not trying to trick you. If you have a house and you want a cash offer, give me a call. If not, I don't want you to call.
Right. Exactly. So. And what you're talking about, the final notice, there's some postcards out there floating around that they say, final notice, we've been trying to reach you concerning your property. It's very important that we get in touch with you. But it's almost like tricking them to think there's a problem with the house, or maybe you're a city official or code enforcement or something like that. And it just makes them mad, right?
Right. And I think that for some investors, right, we'll talk about like the enterprise investor, the person who's sending hundreds of thousands of mail pieces and just has an operation where they can manage a bunch of calls. I see the value in collecting a phone number because, they're angry today, but now you have their phone number, not just their mailing address.
Right.
So now you can have a whole process for, for filtering that lead and actually turning that into a deal. But that's not the business that I have set up to handle that much call volume and to, it's not my gig. I want it targeted and effective.
Right. Straight to the point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Now, how do you handle the intake? Do all of them go to a live call? I mean, I'm assuming you're not taking every call, right?
That has been the hardest part of this business and wanting to grow it is finding another acquisition manager. So I do have a partner now. We have a call system, a round robin. So basically, if they're in the field all the time. So if they can't answer the phone live, then it rings to me.
Right.
I've had VAs, and there's nothing wrong with VAs, but it's a process of finding the right ones, training them.
Right.
But I haven't gotten that part figured out yet. I find every time I do use a VA, which I've probably had about 6 now, it's less quality conversations. I can just do a better job building that trust, collecting the information, and knowing pretty quickly whether there's going to be a deal there or not, as opposed to the VA. And that's probably just me not taking the time, right? I'm doing this part-time, so I haven't taken the time to either find that right VA or train the right VA. But again, it's less calls I can handle, but I feel like I'm closing more consistently than having to have that VA.
Right. And in my opinion, there's certain things you just don't want a VA doing. And being on the phone with a prospect is one of them. I think it's much better if either the acquisition manager or like an inside sales rep can do that.
Right.
You're going to get much higher conversion rate based on based on my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things that really helped me when I was getting started was I quickly realized how important it was going to be. Well, 2 things. I didn't drive anyone to a website to generate leads. I always wanted to pick up the phone and call. Right. But I needed to be able to track that lead when the phone rang. So I did some research and found an app that would give me a tracking number. If they called that, then that lead was put into a system where I could keep track of when they called. It recorded the call, which was huge for me because at the time my kids were 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. And I didn't have the ability to just pull out a notebook and write stuff down or get to my laptop. So I needed to be able to, when I got back to the office or after I put the kids to bed, I needed to be able to answer the phone, but not necessarily be in a position where I could do anything but gather the initial information.
Sure.
So tracking phone number and that recorded the call. And that was mobile, something that I could view on, with one hand while I've got, a child in the other hand so I found an app. You can use it on the website as well, but I found an app called Rei-Leads-Manager.com.
Right.
And that helped me tremendously because I could go listen to the recording, because sometimes I might not hear the address right or I forgot the name or whatever. It made it real simple for me to just be able to get those calls, be able to make calls back out from that same trackable phone number and a personal phone line.
Right.
So that was super helpful.
That's really good. So Brandon, what kind of CRM do you use, like to put all the leads in and then follow up with with all the prospects that you didn't buy their house?
So in the beginning, I used the Rei Leads Manager. Simple. So if you're new, I highly recommend keeping it as simple as possible. There's a few things that are essential, and the essentials are you need the call tracking. They need to be able to call a number that just captures the number. You can put their name, email, everything else in later. You need to be able to record the call, I think, and then you need it needs to be something that's allows you to basically tag people and follow up, right?
Right.
So that's what I did use. But as I've done more marketing, as I've, started to systematize things more, I'm a huge fan of Investor PO. It's a customization of Podio.
Yeah,
and
we know him well.
Yeah. Good friend of mine. I love that system because it has automated follow-up. It has great reporting. It has like a flight checklist, basically. So depending on what stage the lead is at, I know what the next steps are. I don't have to think about, and I just push a button and then all this automation happens. So that we've been using for probably 6 months now.
Right.
And I'm a huge fan of it. But if anyone's new, I know there's a lot of them out there, try them out. But that app has been great for me. I have a couple of my neighbors that use it and are doing, $1 million a year business, and they're still using that app. I'm like, you sure you don't want to try something? They're like, nope, this is working just fine. I'm like, okay.
That's good. So, yeah, investorpo.com, and it's kind of like a done for you Podio system, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so much more. Like I said, I like it because even if I can't answer a call live, I know that they got a text message from me 2 minutes later, and then they also got a voicemail broadcast. I tried to call them back even though I didn't. It's a pre-recorded voicemail that drops into their voicemail. So I like a lot of that automation because it allows me to stay part-time but still increase the marketing budget.
That's great. That's really, really good. Brandon, man, this has been awesome. This is some really, really good information and
good
content.
To catch up.
Yeah. And everybody watching, I'm sure they loved it. Do you have any anything you'd like to share with our listeners or anything, or how they would reach out to you, or some additional information or whatever?
Yeah, sure. So anything real estate related, I'm a lead trainer for flippingawesome.com. So go check that. That's a resource out there. We're on Facebook. We have 8,000 members in our Facebook group. So it's a good community of investors that are just helping each other out and supporting each other. So flippingawesome.com. And then kind of my passion is, as you can tell on the lifestyle side of things, is that investment in family, and that investment in my partner. My wife is also my business partner. So if you work with your spouse, or you're interested in maybe jumping into real estate with your spouse, that will bring a whole new dynamic to your relationship. So we have a podcast that we do every week over at middletonmethods.com, or on iTunes, iHeartRadio, any of those channels. So you can check that out as well. And we're on Instagram at Brandon and Sam. That's
awesome. And Sam is great. I mean, she knows what she's doing. She's awesome. Yeah. I know she, I saw her at the last Collective Genius meeting, and, she was working with some of us setting this up as well. So that's awesome, man. I really, really appreciate you being on, and thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you've been in some ways a mentor to me, being in this business for over 30 years. And, like I said, I've watched plenty of your videos, probably have some of your trainings and stuff. So it's an honor to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Be sure and tell Sam I said hi.
All right, will do. Take care.
All right. Thanks a lot, buddy. Take care.